They laughed right in my face. "Your name isn't in the will." No sympathy, no pause, just cruel laughter echoing around the room. I didn't fight back, I didn't argue. I simply stood up, walked out, and let the door close behind me. Hours later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, missed calls stacking by the dozens. And trust me, what came next flipped everything upside down. Before I tell you how it all unraveled, hit like and drop a comment if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. Subscribe, this one's going to hit deep. I grew up in a house where love was conditional, where every compliment came with an asterisk, and every smile depended on whether you were the right child that day. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden one. He was loud, charming, the kind of kid who could skip a homework assignment and still have the teachers raving about his potential. My parents adored him. They bragged about him. To neighbors, posted about him online, showered him with gifts. Me, I was the quiet one, the fixer in the background. If something broke in the house, I was the one patching it together with duct tape and patience. If Daniel made a mess, crashed the car, failed a class, borrowed money he never paid back, I was the one smoothing it over, working double shifts, handing over my own savings, just to keep the peace. My parents would sigh and call me responsible, but it wasn't praise. It was expectation. The difference was always clear. When Daniel graduated high school, my parents threw a massive party in the backyard. A rented tent catered food, a brand new car with a bow on top. When I graduated, I got a handshake, a pat on the shoulder, and a store-bought cake with my name misspelled. I told myself it didn't matter that I didn't need the fanfare, but deep down it hurt. It planted a seed. Maybe I really wasn't as important. Years went by, and the favoritism never faded. Family dinners always revolved around Daniel's latest achievements. My attempts at conversation were brushed aside as if I were a guest at my own table. He'd tell the same tired story about some networking event, and they'd listen like it was gospel. If I mentioned my job, my dad would grunt and change the subject. The only person who made me feel different was my father's mother, my grandma. She saw me. She'd slip me little notes in her handwriting. "Don't let them make you small." She'd tell me strength doesn't come from being noticed, it comes from being steady. When she passed, I thought that voice of encouragement was gone forever. But then my dad got sick. Long hospital stays the kind that make you face the reality no one wants to say out loud. During those late nights, I was the one by his bedside. I was the one bringing him water, adjusting the blanket, talking softly when the pain kept him awake. Daniel showed up for 10 minutes at a time, cracking jokes and leaving early for parties. And still, when relatives visited, my parents would beam. Daniel's been such a wonderful support. I sat there invisible, holding the cup of ice chips. When my father finally passed, the house turned somber, but not for long. Whispers about the will began almost immediately. Who would get the house? The business, the savings. Everyone assumed Daniel, of course. My mother even joked once, "Don't expect much, honey, you know how your father felt." She said it with a laugh, like it was obvious, like I should already accept that I wasn't worthy. And still, I clung to hope, because in those quiet hospital nights, my father had gripped my hand and whispered things he never told anyone else. He thanked me. He said he was proud of me. He said he wished he had shown it more. I held on to those words like a lifeline, convincing myself they would translate into something real when the will was read. For once, maybe my name would mean something. For once, maybe I'd be more than the shadow. The day of the will reading came faster than I expected. I dressed carefully, black slacks, a clean button-down, polished shoes. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just respectful. But when I walked into the lawyer's office, the message was clear. I didn't belong. Daniel and my mother were already there, sitting at the long mahogany table. They had taken the best seats near the head, chatting with two cousins like it was a social event. When I entered, Daniel looked me up and down and smirked. "Oh, you came. Brave of you." My mother didn't even glance up from her phone. The lawyer, a gray-haired man named Mr. Patterson, greeted me politely and pointed me to a chair at the far end of the table. Away from the cluster of family, almost as if I were a guest who had wandered in by accident. I sat quietly, folding my hands, ignoring the snickers I could already hear behind me. The room grew still when Mr. Patterson opened the folder. He began reading my father's will in a slow, measured voice. The house went to Daniel. The business assets, Daniel. The savings account, Daniel. Each line felt like another weight dropped on my chest. I sat straighter, waiting, holding my breath for my name. But it never came. Line after line, my father's possessions were handed out to Daniel, to my mother, even to a few extended relatives. My name wasn't there, not once. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a grin spreading across his face. He actually laughed. A low chuckle that grew louder with each item he collected on paper. Finally, he turned toward me, his eyes gleaming. "Guess you didn't make the cut. Tough luck, little sibling." My mother didn't scold him. She joined in. "Don't look so shocked, honey. You knew how close your father was to Daniel. You should be happy for him." The cousins snickered. One of them whispered loudly, "Imagine sitting through this with nothing to show." I stared at the polished wood of the table, my throat tight, my hands trembling under the surface. The humiliation burned hotter than fire. This wasn't just about money. It was about being erased. Years of late-night care, years of sacrifice, years of standing by my father's side, and in the end they laughed as if I'd been nothing more than a shadow. I wanted to scream, to throw the folder across the room and demand they recognize me. But something inside me went quiet instead. A strange, sharp silence that cut through their laughter. I stood up slowly, the chair legs scraping against the floor. The sound made them pause for a second. Daniel tilted his head, smirking. "What, you can't handle it?" I didn't answer. I gathered my bag, pushed in the chair, and walked toward the door. My mother's voice followed me, dripping with mock concern. "Don't be dramatic. This isn't the end of the world." But she was wrong. For me, it was the end of something, the end of hoping, of begging, of waiting for them to see me. At the doorway, I turned once, not to them, but to Mr. Patterson. His eyes flickered with something unreadable, like he knew more than he'd said. I held his gaze for a second, then left without a word. The hallway outside was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy in your chest. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. Another message, probably some gloating cousin. I didn't check it. I just kept walking, each step echoing against the tile floor. They thought I'd been erased. They thought my name had no place in the story. But as the door clicked shut behind me, one thought burned steady in my mind. If they believe I don't exist in the will, let's see how they handle the truth when it finally surfaces. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with nothing but a lamp glowing faintly in the corner. Their laughter still echoed in my ears, my mother's dismissive tone, Daniel's smirk. I thought the humiliation would crush me, but instead a strange calm took over. I pulled out the old shoebox I'd kept hidden at the back of my closet. Inside were papers, letters my father had written during his illness, bank statements, even copies of legal documents he'd asked me to keep just in case. I'd never fully understood why he gave them to me. Maybe deep down he knew I'd be the one to protect them. As I spread the papers out, one envelope caught my eye. Thick, official-looking, with my father's unmistakable handwriting scrawled across the front, "For Patterson, Codicil." My pulse quickened. I slid the papers out carefully. It was dated only a month before he passed. It was an amendment to his will. My eyes scanned the words, heart pounding louder with every line. The house still Daniel's. The business split with me designated as co-owner, but then came the shock a private account one none of us had known about left entirely to me, and not a small sum enough to change everything. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't erased me. He'd left me something that mattered, something that proved all those nights by his bedside hadn't been invisible. But why hadn't Patterson read this? Had he missed it? Or had Daniel and my mother somehow misplaced it before today's reading? The thought made my stomach turn. I didn't storm back to confront them. Not yet. Instead, I took the envelope straight to someone I trusted, Ms. Hayes, an attorney I'd worked with once before when sorting out a tenant dispute. She was sharp, meticulous, and most importantly independent from my family. We met in her downtown office the next morning. I slid the codicil across her desk, my fingers trembling despite the calm expression I tried to wear. She read through it carefully, lips tightening with every page. Finally, she looked up at me. "This is valid," she said firmly. "Properly signed, witnessed, notarized. If it wasn't presented yesterday, someone deliberately kept it hidden. Legally, this supersedes the original in several key areas." I swallowed hard. "So, it's real. They can't take it away." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Not unless you let them. In fact, if we file this with probate court, the entire estate will have to be rebalanced. Daniel and your mother will lose control of the assets they thought they already owned." The words sank in slowly. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel around my family power. But I didn't rush. I didn't make calls or send angry messages. Instead, I let the silence stretch. I went to work, ate dinner, even watched a movie by myself that night. Meanwhile, I knew chaos was brewing in their house. Sure enough, the texts began to pile up. First from Daniel. "Hey, you didn't leave anything at Patterson's office, did you?" Then from my mother. "We need to talk about some missing paperwork. Call me back." By the second day, the tone shifted from casual to panicked. "The bank won't release the funds without more documents. Do you know anything about this?" I ignored them all. At work, I answered clients' calls smiling as my phone buzzed endlessly in my pocket. At night, I set my phone face down on the counter, letting it vibrate against the wood until it finally fell silent. Each unanswered call was like reclaiming a piece of myself they had stolen over the years. Meanwhile, Ms. Hayes quietly began the legal process. She filed the codicil, notified the court, and sent certified letters to the estate executor. The gears of the system began to turn slow but unstoppable. Daniel had no idea. Neither did my mother. They thought their laughter had been the final word. They thought I had slunk away in shame. But I wasn't erased. I was the one holding the paper that could unravel everything they believed was theirs. And the best part, they wouldn't realize it until it was too late. I sipped my coffee by the window that night, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Their voices had always been loud, drowning me out. But in my silence, I'd found something louder than any of their words control. By the third day, the tone of their messages had shifted completely. Gone were the smug laughs and casual texts. Now it was pure desperation. Daniel called 10 times in a row, leaving voicemails that jumped from anger to pleading. "Pick up the phone. We can fix this if you just cooperate." Then another. "Look, I might have said some things, but you can't really mean to cut us out. Call me back." My mother's messages were worse. Long, guilt-laden paragraphs about family unity and how your father wouldn't want you to be selfish. She sprinkled in threats, too, about lawyers, about dragging me into court, but each threat was undercut by panic. "Please, we can't lose the house. Just talk to us." I didn't answer. Instead, I went about my days as though nothing had changed. I showed up at work on time, had lunch with a coworker, even stopped to buy flowers for myself on the way home. At night, I cooked dinner, slowly savoring the quiet while my phone buzzed like a trapped bee on the counter. Meanwhile, the cracks in their fortress grew wider. A cousin texted me screenshots from the family group chat, Daniel accusing my mother of misplacing documents, my mother accusing Daniel of spending too much too soon. Voices were raised, insults thrown. The golden family image was unraveling in real time. The breaking point came one evening when Daniel showed up outside my apartment. I spotted him from the window, pacing phone pressed to his ear, barking into the receiver. He looked frantic, sweat soaking his collar despite the cool night air. He rang my buzzer over and over, shouting up toward my window. "You can't just ignore us, you need to fix this mess." I didn't move. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, watching him from behind the curtain. Eventually, the building manager came out and told him to leave. His shouts faded as he stormed off into the night. The power had shifted. For years, I was the one begging for a seat at the table, for a shred of recognition. Now they were the ones outside in the cold, pounding on the glass, desperate to be let in. And I wasn't finished. With Ms. Hayes guiding the filings, the court issued a notice the estate was frozen pending review of the codicil. Daniel couldn't touch the accounts. My mother couldn't sell the business shares. Everything they thought was secure had slipped through their fingers, and the harder they tried to grab it, the faster it crumbled. I didn't shout, I didn't gloat. I just stayed silent, letting the weight of my absence crush them in ways my presence never could. For the first time, I wasn't the powerless one. I was the storm they never saw coming. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I had just finished grocery shopping when a knock rattled my apartment door. Not the polite kind, this was loud, insistent, angry. When I opened it, Daniel and my mother stood there. Daniel's face was red jaw, tight fists, clenching and unclenching. My mother's eyes were puffy mascara smudged as if she hadn't slept in days. Enough games, Daniel snapped the moment he saw me. "We know you have something. Hand it over." I leaned casually against the door frame. "Something?" My mother's voice cracked. "The codicil. We know about it now. Patterson called. He said the court received new documents. Why didn't you tell us?" I let the silence hang for a moment, the only sound the hum of the fridge behind me. Then I spoke slowly, deliberately. "Because you laughed at me. Because you told me I didn't exist in his will. You erased me before you even knew the truth." Daniel's voice rose, desperate now. "We can fix this. We'll cut you in, give you a fair share." I actually laughed. A short, bitter laugh that stopped him cold. "Cut me in." "You don't get to cut me in. The codicil makes me co-owner of the business and gives me the private account outright. Legally, it's already mine. You can't bargain with something you never had." My mother stepped forward, her voice sharp, almost shrill. "Do you realize what you've done? You're tearing this family apart. Your father wanted us to stay united." I met her eyes, steady and calm. "No. What tore this family apart was your choice to belittle me, to treat me like nothing, to laugh when you thought I'd been written out. Don't twist this on me." For a moment, the hallway was silent. Daniel shifted, his confidence cracking. My mother's lips trembled, searching for words. Then Daniel exploded. "You're pathetic, always jealous, always bitter. You think this makes you powerful, you'll die alone with your bank account while the rest of us move on." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. I'd heard them all before in one form or another. This time I had something stronger than their cruelty. I had proof. I reached to the side table by the door and lifted the folder I'd prepared. Inside was a certified copy of the codicil, stamped and filed with the court. I held it up just long enough for them to see the seal. "This," I said quietly, "is reality. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to accept it. But you can't erase it." The echo of my words filled the hallway louder than any scream. Daniel's shoulders slumped. My mother covered her mouth, a muffled sob escaping. For the first time, their power was gone, and they knew it. I closed the door gently, not slamming it, not giving them the satisfaction of rage. Just a quiet, final click. Behind that door, I heard it, the sound of my mother's sob, Daniel's low curse, their footsteps retreating down the hall. And in that silence, I knew the balance had finally shifted. The days after that confrontation felt strangely quiet. No more constant buzzing phone, no more guilt-laced messages, just silence. The court filings moved forward smoothly. With Ms. Hayes handling everything, the estate was officially updated to include the codicil. The business shares were legally mine. The private account transferred directly to me. No loopholes, no tricks left for Daniel or my mother to exploit. I thought I might feel guilty, but I didn't. Not this time. Instead, I felt lighter, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for years. A weight made of their dismissive comments, their laughter, their refusal to see me. I didn't use the money to flaunt or to punish them. I invested it into myself, my career, my future, my peace. I bought a small house with a garden, a place that was mine alone. A place where I could sit on the porch in the evening and hear nothing but the wind in the trees, not the constant echo of their voices. One night, as the sun set in streaks of gold and orange, I thought about my father, about the way he had squeezed my hand in those final days, whispering words of pride I'd waited my whole life to hear. Maybe he couldn't change the past, but through that codicil, he gave me a chance to change my future, and I took it. I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped letting them destroy me. And for the first time in years, I finally felt free. If you've ever stood your ground against family who tried to erase you know this, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And don't forget to like and subscribe because the next story might remind you of your own strength.